Hey, Mike, how are you? Welcome to the Pop Culture SquadCast, everybody.
Hey, Bob. I'm doing swell. How are you doing?
Um, it's Tuesday night in late April. It's not bad. It's the world is crazy. We're gonna get to some stuff. We're gonna have a great guest tonight. Uh, uh,
Can I give a shout out to our friends up in Canada?
you may. I woke up happy this morning. Yesterday was a pretty crappy day, and we're gonna get to your shout out. Yesterday was pretty crappy because I had worked a lot this weekend. I was up very late. I was exhausted. Today I woke up happier. Proud of our friends to the north, although I knew they would be.
I think this is the first time I actually stayed up. Well, I mean, I don't go to bed until like 3 in the morning or 4 anyway, but I stayed up watching television late to watch the returns come in from another country. You know, because usually it's like, oh yeah, Tierra del Fuego, cool, I can wait. But
Sure.
no, no, I am
Elbows
so
up.
happy for our many, many Canadian friends, and I am so jealous.
Yeah. Well, we have to live with what we have. It's not good. It is a drain. It is a slog. The world, um, you know, it's something we have to get through, and we continue to try. It is we're gonna take these next couple of hours that you guys have decided to be with us or listen to us whenever that is, and we're gonna talk about some things that are probably annoying and probably terrible about the world, and we're gonna get into some weird stuff. But we're gonna talk about good comics. We're gonna talk about the industry. We're gonna talk about storytelling. We're gonna talk about all these things, and that's why we come here. It's it's terrible out there at times. And we're just gonna try and keep our heads, up, noses up, and like we'll make it through. I hope.
I hope. Yeah, I mean, look, lots of people all over this country are standing up and saying, you can't screw me over like this. You can't screw us over like this. You can't screw this nation over like this. And quite frankly, even though I'm embarrassed by the people who are running this country, and I use the word running very loosely, I am proud of my fellow Americans who are standing up. Good for you folks. Keep it up. We need you to keep that up. Everybody, Earth needs you to keep it up. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So yes, let us start off with some good news. Congratulations, Canada, for their elections. The next thing we're
Elbows
going to
up.
talk. What's up? Yes, elbows up.
Elbows up.
Exactly. Um, uh, the next thing we're going to talk about is this weekend. It is a major event in comic books. It is Free Comic Book Day this coming weekend. There are a whole bunch of great books. If you're not familiar with Free Comic Book Day, we want to highlight it here. This is what Pop Culture Squad is about, right? On the first Saturday in May, at your local comic shop. And if you don't know where a local comic shop is, if you go into the comments of this podcast, you will see a link to a really cool site called comicshoplocator.com, and it will tell you where there's a comic shop near you. On Free Comic Book Day, your local comic shop will have a ton of comics. Usually, most often, they're a bunch of free comic books because publishers develop this free comics that are to be given out to people. They're essentially advertisements, occasionally important, interesting stories, usually a bunch of cool stuff, and most often your comic book shop will have a sale going on to entice you to get some other things that you might want to find or things you may have been holding off on. It's usually a party, and I hope it is this year as well.
I've never had a bad time at a store on Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah,
It's
there
always
will be
been
signings all over the place as well.
all over. And it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. I would like to point out, however, that your retailer, the folks who own the store that's giving you these comics for free because it's free comic book day, they pay for them. Now, they don't pay as much as they pay for, the traditional formatted comics. But there is an expenditure on their end. Things are tight. You're getting it for free. Pick up some stuff in addition to show them you're grateful and turn yourself on to some new stuff, some stuff that you've never read before by people you've never heard of before. There is so much new stuff out there. You'll find plenty.
I agree. There are free comic books from Dark Horse Comics, Marvel Comics, Mad Cave Studios, IDW Publishing, Boom Studios, Image Comics, First Second Books, Vault Comics, Dynamite Entertainment, Oni Press, and others. Not DC, but
DC has some free comics.
I don't think so.
They had something with Wonder Woman's kangaroo.
What?
Yeah, I mean, that catches my eye because I like Wonder Woman's kangaroo.
Maybe there was. Maybe it was this year. This year, there's a Wonder Woman kangaroo.
I think it's this year. I don't know. All the years run together.
I didn't see it. I mean, I looked through. I went to
I'm
free
a big fan of that room, man.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking about kangaroos.
Yes. Tell me about the kangaroo.
There was a kangaroo on the loose in Alabama. I think it was today. I think it was this morning. It got loose and ran all over the place and caused traffic accidents and stuff. Nobody got hurt, including the kangaroo. And they did not have to call Mike Grell to help them, which means that there wasn't a lot of damage or anything, just a kangaroo hopping around Alabama.
Why would they have called Mike Grell?
In the worst case scenario, if you have a really angry kangaroo, I'm not sure what they can do other than tear down your eucalyptus trees. But if you got a pissy kangaroo, you want somebody who can take care of it. And trust me, there you go. Mike can do that. If he can take down, if he can stand up to the American Nazi Party when he was living in Idaho, he can deal with a kangaroo.
So yeah, this happened. Macon County Sheriff and this one looks good. Let's just try this.
Yeah. No, because Earth isn't weird enough. Oh yeah, that's so cute. Look at that.
I don't know. Yes, we're not doing that.
We need more kangaroos.
Oh, here's a kangaroo. This is your.
Look at that. Look at that.
There's a kangaroo on the highway in America. This is the world we live in.
He's making it for the border.
He is. I don't know what to say. I will say that's a pretty crazy story. It is a crazy story, folks. I got more. We got more crazy stories. And besides kangaroos, we're going to talk about something that has been a recurring theme on this show. Diamond issues. We spend a lot of time talking about Diamond Comics distributions. They have been up until about 5 years ago. There is about a 25 to 30 year run where they were the primary single distributor of American comics to comic shops. That changed.
I think the word monopoly is true.
It is the appropriate word. I'm just trying to be. I'm trying not to, upset the old man who doesn't have a what.
Piss off friends of ours. We have friends over the many decades who have done fine work with or because of Diamond. And yes. I heard from them, from Steve, Jeppy, all the way across the board.
Yes. It is it was a monopoly. It is no longer, and it is in bankruptcy. We've been discussing that on this show. Thanks for our patience. But I gotta tell you, it has gotten crazy pants. The news out of this thing, where to catch people up, Diamond filed for bankruptcy. There was an auction. A company called Alliance Entertainment, which we're going to call AENT, won the auction. Then there was some rumors of things that went through where Diamond wanted to not have them win and want the backup bid to win the auction. That didn't happen, and the court ruled that Alliance AENT would be the purchaser of Diamond. Well, in the last week, this is what happened. Alliance canceled the purchase. They said, we are no longer doing this. We are out of it. We quit. They say they're citing the rules of the auction and the purchase agreement. Diamond is thrilled about this. They have another somebody who's going to buy it, seeming to be the people that they had originally wanted, but that hasn't been announced. Then that happened over the weekend, and we're like, what the heck? Yesterday, we're getting to yesterday. Yesterday, there's news that the bankruptcy could be changed to Chapter 7, which is way worse and requires an executor to sell off all the assets and distribute the proceeds, because Diamond has not been providing to the court monthly operating reports and expenses, which they are supposed to. The last 3 of them are late, have not been there. There's a hearing to be heard at the end of May. That is what I wrote, folks. That is what I said. Those are the things we're going to talk about up until about 20 minutes before this show. I do last minute checks to see any big news happening. Please always go to the good sites that I mentioned. Comics Beat and Graphic Policy is also doing some excellent work on this. Go to Graphic Policy if you want to know what's happening at Diamond, because they're doing fantastic reporting on this. And Bleeding Cool as well. We go to those sites, we check them out, we see what the news is, or what the rumors are, or what something we want to talk about. So I got that, and I was ready to say. And then today, AENT is suing Diamond and their banker and the managers of the bankruptcy.
Again, they've done it before.
Right. Well, they're suing them now for their deposit back, which is like $7 million plus interest, because we now find out why they canceled the purchase agreement, because Diamond has been hiding the fact that Wizards of the Coast, which is a game maker, they make Pokemon cards and Magic cards, is ending their distribution relationship with Alliance Games, which is part of Diamond, which is roughly 25% of their revenue. So they didn't find that out until 2 weeks ago, and they said, hey, you're worth much less without Wizards of the Coast. We're out. Now we know why. I don't even, I was thinking even before this, this would be a good story. This should be like a comic or a movie or something. This is some high drama. And then I will echo the words of the great Heidi McDonald. I have no opinions on how this is going to end from here on out. I'm just going to watch and let me know when it's over.
Yeah, really. Your comic book idea. You think we could get Paul Levitz to write it? He would be perfect. He would be perfect. It's a sad end to a great comics institution. Diamond has been around longer than most comic book publishers. Think about that for a second.
That is true.
And if not for Diamond, no matter what machinations they've gone through over the decades, if not for Diamond, there'd be no comics business in America today.
Without Diamond, there would be no Free Comic Book Day. I mean, that's
right. They own that. That's part of their assets that are for sale. If you want to buy Free Comic Book Day, you may have another opportunity. And it's a wonderful thing, and I think it should be an asset to anybody. I'm just hoping that the new owners, if there are new owners and it's not sold off for parts, the new owners care about the comics business at all. If they're just buying it for, well, Wizards of the Coast, they're not going to be there if they're just buying it for the toys and that sort of stuff, the collectibles. Well, that's where the money is. I got that, but we need the comics to prop it all up and to keep us happy.
I mean, that's been one of the consternations of this whole process is that the winning bidder, AENT, did not seem very interested or aware about comics. They liked the access to customers, the retail access to those locations, and everyone just kind of felt that they didn't really care to support or be in the business of distributing comics. That was
but we don't know how true that is. There could be people there who have good ideas or had good ideas about what to do with the operation, both in a synchronistic form and in parts. We need new ideas. We need new people and new ideas. I mean, everybody does always, no matter what they're doing. If you're into cancer research, you need new people to look at them little slides. But we need it badly because in rough economic times, comics can prosper. But the retailers, the small shop owners, are going to have a much tougher time. And they've survived through COVID.
Yes, I agree with you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we come on this show and we try to keep things light, keep things entertaining. This is the world we live in. It breaks through at times. I read a bunch of comics this weekend and they were a lot of fun. Like you gotta look at the good stuff. I mean, keep getting them, keep reading them. People keep doing it.
I've read some good comics myself. One that was surprising, but please go first.
Well, I have an insurmountable, and I'm conceding that it is an insurmountable read list, to be read list. I'm caught up on a bunch of DC books. I've caught up. There's a couple of indie books that I've caught up. I'm very behind in Marvel, and I apologize. And I apologize to the universe for being so behind. But
you have been busy.
I have been. I am always entertained and thrilled by comic books and reading them, even if they're not great. Some of them aren't great. I still am very much enjoying the Black Canary book. I caught up on that. I'm still very much enjoying both Wonder Womans. Both Wonder Woman books are high quality comics, in my opinion. So yeah, I did read.
The Wonder Woman that shipped last week was arguably the best of the series, and it's been a great series.
Yes, I read that as well and enjoyed it tremendously. I think it was really, really, really excellent. I loved it. What did you read?
I read a lot of stuff, evidently more than you.
Well,
maybe not.
I read 20 books on Saturday.
Okay, you win. Here's the book that surprised me. IDW is one of the many comic book publishers that has rights to Godzilla. Right now, about 4 out of every 3 comic books has Godzilla in them, no matter who publishes them in this country. IDW seems to have the main Godzilla licenses. I can't figure it out. It's Godzilla. I mean, that's cool, but, it's Godzilla. So they started a series about Godzilla, an anthology series, Godzilla going to different cities in America and doing the Godzilla thing. And I think the first of these, they're all one-shots, was Godzilla attacking Chicago. My hometown, I talk about it incessantly. People wish I'd shut the hell up about it. Nonetheless, the only reason why I read it was to see like how close they came to really using the city, because TV does a horrible job. There's 4 different stories in there, and I was very, 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 very pleased to see a number of Chicagoans, or at least people who spent substantial amount of time there, involved in the book. Certainly, they put their knowledge of Chicago to a correct use. You don't see a lot of stuff you see on television where, you're looking at the thing and go, that's not that city. That's wrong. It's just wrong. They don't have that stuff. That's why they call Gotham City in the Batman movies. Because then nobody can say, well, you can't do that. Well, except for the hardcore fans who have no life. The last page of the last story, I forget who did it because I'm stupid. Actually, the last panel, the last balloon, made me laugh out loud. And unless I've been laughing all the way, or I'm watching something like, John Oliver, I generally don't laugh out loud a lot. And this was brilliant. Chris Burnham did one of the variant covers. Chris lived there for many years and found the best chicken restaurant in Chicago, which is not easy. Beautiful cover. The people who did all of the covers seemed to really know what they were doing, if they were working from reference or what, but it was exciting. I had a great time. All 4 stories, including the ones that, I thought, okay, I'll read it. It's there. I got the book, might as well read it. Nope, they were all great.
Good. I'm glad you did that. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I knew it was coming, and I knew you would get it.
Oh yeah, sure. How can I not?
Of course. We did talk about that.
I ordered $100 worth of popcorn from Chicago that arrived today.
What makes Chicago popcorn better than any other popcorn? Mind you, I hate popcorn, so there's no good popcorn.
Okay, well, if you don't like popcorn, then it's irrelevant. I'm
just curious what would make it any different than the horrible thing that it is.
The taste, the texture, the poppedness, if they're large and fully popped and very well defined, and all those little curves that look like parts of your brain, if they're all individual and succulent. And then they have to be coated, if they're coated at all, with really first-class stuff. Their cheese corn is phenomenal. It might even have cheese on it, but it hasn't made me sick, so I don't think so. Their caramel corn is just as good. They mix the 2 of them up together. They have all different types. And the store, the chain, which is now somewhat national, they're all over the country, but not very many of them, opened the year before I was born.
Well, it's old popcorn then.
I'm sorry?
It's old popcorn then.
No. They make it fresh.
Okay.
And you can tell because it takes a machine gun to blast open the can. That's how well packed it is.
I am truly happy that you are satisfied with your popcorn.
Thank you.
I will leave it at that. I want to. We're going to bring in our guest. He is here. Ron Marz was, I think, the 15th guest on the 15th episode of Pop Culture SquadCast Live. We are now in our 80s, so it's time we have him back. He's got a project that's funding right now on Zoop, and we're going to talk about that first. But before we get to that, let's bring in Ron Marz. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, thanks for
Hey,
having me.
Ron.
That was, like watching my life flash in front of my
Yeah,
eyes.
well, I gotten better at it since you were here last. So I had the existing video. I had to spruce it up a little.
That was very lovely. Thank you.
It could have gone on 3 times as long.
I could have. I did. That is true.
And it would have if it didn't show up.
There's a lot of there's a lot of back issues downstairs. There's fodder to pull from.
Let's talk about what's currently going on. So, and I'm really excited that that Shinku Complete, which is what it's called, and we'll bring it in here, is out there. You and I talked about this last summer about what the book means to you. I'm going to let you kind of start with that. Like, what is Shinku about, and why are we doing this?
Shinku is a contemporary vampire hunting samurai story. There you see our vampire hunting samurai. And it was an image book that Lee Motor and I did together, co-owned. And we did 5 issues, put out a trade paperback of the first story arc. And Lee drew more issues than that. He drew almost 2 complete issues beyond that have never seen print. Very sadly and unfortunately, Lee passed away about 2 years ago. So those pages have been sitting there. And now those pages are actually sitting in my office here, the originals. So it took a while for me to figure out how we needed to get those pages out there and how we needed to kind of put the period on the end of Shinku for Lee's legacy. So this is how that came about. So Shinku Complete is an oversized hardcover we're doing through Zoop that will collect all of the previous Shinku stuff. So 150 pages or so that we've already published, plus a bunch of the unpublished pages that will be finished, so that the story continues. And then sketches, covers, all sorts of stuff that Lee left behind. When he passed away, I inherited the pages that were left behind from the various and sundry projects that we did together, because Lee had no next to kin, he had no family. So those ended up with me, and it's been a process for me of figuring out what to do with them and what's the right legacy to leave for Lee with this batch. There are other projects that he left behind too. But it took me a while to come to the conclusion that, this is how to do it, rather than having some other artists or artists finish additional stories. This book is everything Shinku that Lee produced in one volume.
I think that's awesome.
And this will be distributed to bookstores and stuff later on.
Yeah, hopefully so. We're doing it through Zoop just because it seemed like the easiest way to get the thing out into the world. Mm-hmm. And rather than going through the process of dragging it back out to publishers, and this way, I was going to say we have full control over it. I guess what I really mean is I have full control over it, because we're doing it the way I want to do it, and we're doing it. We're doing it as a hardcover. We're doing it oversized, and those are all decisions that I felt like contributed to showing off the art in the best possible light. So this is, I really feel like this is something I'm doing for Lee, and to get his legacy out there in front of people. Same thing with the pages. We've got original pages that are part of the campaign, and I have a stack of them sitting here, stacks of them sitting here. And for the longest time, I couldn't really face, okay, how are we gonna should I just hold on to all this? This is my last connection to my friend. And I really came to the conclusion that I needed to get these pages out into the world, and offer them up to people who would appreciate what they are and appreciated Lee, and to sort of spread that, spread his legacy to people who would be interested and who would cherish it as much as I do.
You're also making or showing a commitment to the readers of your series from the Image days, because they evidently liked it, at least enough for 5 issues, and people are talking about it now, and you're funding this thing, so there's some good karma going around it. But you're giving them something that I suspect a lot of your readers didn't think they'd ever see, In other words, cool shit.
Yeah, I hope. I hope it's cool shit. I'm there. It's 2 issues that I'm very happy with. And honestly, the intention was to just keep going with the series, but everybody got pulled in different directions and pulled onto other projects. Lee, during the pandemic, Lee just sort of became a bit more of a recluse, and as did we all, I guess. So the momentum, the inertia for the project just sort of dissipated, and it all just sat there for a while. So now we have something to put back in front of people and hopefully remind them, more than anything else, that Lee was just an exceptional artist and an exceptional storyteller.
That's great. It's a great tribute.
I think so too. You and I talked about this last year at a show, and you had some of the pages on your table, and I want you to, if you can, if it's okay, I can tell how much it meant to you, how difficult it was for you to have those pages there, and how much of an interesting stuff. If you've ever been to Ron's table, it's pretty sparse. There's not some books on there you can buy, but he's there. There was a Lee Motor Shinku spot on his table, and I think that was intentional for you, and I know it was difficult for you. Does this feel like it's the right thing for you, that you're getting a little bit of, I don't know if closure is the right word, but is it harder? Is it harder than you thought it was going to be?
I guess I'm fairly comfortable with where we're at with all this stuff. It took a while, and I didn't do anything until it felt okay, until it felt right. Because these pages, and again, some of them are, there's still a stack of them sitting over there. The pages from Shinku, pages from Dragon Prince, other stories that we did together. The Mucker for Edgar Rice Burroughs estate website. And it's all, it's all just unbelievably gorgeous. All pencils, few pages of inks that he inked himself, but mostly all pencils that are just perfect. They're, the line weights are there, the feathering is there, everything is completely immaculate, which is just what he did. A perfectionist to the end. So it felt like, for me, it felt like these pages, this stack of art in my office here, was my last connection to him, was my physical connection to him. So it took me a while to figure out that I needed to let that stuff go out into the world and give other people a chance to have that sort of connection with Lee, and have given pages to people that knew Lee, people that work with Lee, with us on the book, and that's an ongoing process too, to get pages into the hands of people who were acquainted with Lee and would, to get pages into their hands that would mean something to them as well.
Something like 95% of all comics published are now available, legally or not, digitally. Our stuff, and to a broader extent, just about everything these days, is now a matter of history, or becomes a matter of history. And maybe people weren't looking at it 50 years ago because, they were comic books. They're looking at it now. So I think that we, as producers of creative material, need to keep an eye on that historical view. Sometime down the road, somebody's going to discover your book and go, holy crap, this stuff is phenomenal. I want to know more. And that's great.
Yeah, I mean, so we hope, and I'm of two minds of all of that stuff. And the one side of it is, after a week, they're all back issues, right? They're all just, in a bin somewhere, destined for the dollar bin at the convention, which is perfectly fine because I love the dollar bin at conventions.
Sure,
those are great. So on the one hand, yeah, it's sort of ephemeral. It's sort of you read it now, and there's a stack of books next to me on my desk here that I'll read them. I'll toss them in a box, and I won't think about them again for a while. And that's okay. But like you said, Mike, we're all leaving our own legacies behind, and this stuff means something to people, and that's a huge responsibility, and it's hugely flattering. I was just at a show in New Jersey over the weekend, and you have people come up and bring you books and tell you, this was the book I picked off the rack of the local supermarket when I was 10 or 12 or whatever, and I've been reading comics since. I mean, you don't make a big deal out of it at the time because you don't want to be that asshole at a show. But it's flattering, and it's important. Your work, and obviously by your work I mean everybody's work, and the artists that you work with and all of that, you helped somebody discover this medium that we all love, and you helped spark that joy in them that they're still doing it.
That's right. We do that the same way that we were turned on to comics. As you had mentioned, here's this book that you saw in the supermarket when you were 10. I have done, and I'm sure you've been in the business for a while, this has happened to you, where people will come up with, books to sign, and every once in a while you'll see a book that you forgot you worked on or convinced you didn't work on, and then they open it up. Usually I got Bob for that. Says, no, you worked on this. He shows me where. And it's sort of that discovery process can happen with yourself too. It's like, yeah, I did work on this. Wow.
You do get reminded. Well, much like Bob's, sexy opening. You go to a show or you go to a signing, and you see your career flash before your eyes from earliest days to 2 weeks ago. Everything in between.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Like Dick Shawn, the great actor, comedian, I am certain that when my time is up, it'll be up at a convention. I'm going to die on a panel somewhere, and people will think, as they did with Dick Shawn, that he was doing a joke.
Until they realize you're not.
He's right.
It's interesting you brought that up, and I wasn't planning this, but I'm going to tell the story of our night in Raleigh. We had dinner, and then we decided to go to a place. A friend of ours was taking us to a speakeasy, and there was a cover, or they had to check IDs, and Ron's like, "Oh, I didn't bring my ID," and we're like, "Oh, don't worry about it." Mind you, he'd spent most of the day talking about the horrible people who wanted him fired for what happened on Green Lantern and for creating Kyle Rayner and all that stuff, and he was talking about how nobody had any respect for it. That was a lot of the day going into that. We go into this place, and they're like, Ron's like, "Oh, I don't have my ID." And it's like, "Don't worry, we'll just tell him you created Kyle Rayner, and it'll be fine." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's gonna go over well." And we go up there, and the guy sees that we're comic book people, and he says to us, "Oh, you with the Comic-Con?" We're like, "Yeah, we're there." It's like, he said, "Well, what's your favorite, comic run?" And we're like, "Oh, whatever." And he's like, we said, "What's yours?" And he's like, "Well, Emerald Twilight is my favorite comic of all time." And we're like, "Well, let me tell you, our friend here, and the bouncer guy went crazy. He's like, "Oh my gosh, couldn't believe it. We're downstairs having a drink. He comes inside to make sure that he wasn't pulling his leg." And it brightened up Ron's day, I would say.
It was odd. It was certainly odd because you don't expect that, right? You don't expect to go to a speakeasy and have the bouncer, one, read comics, and two, have read your comic and also say it's my favorite one ever. And and it wasn't like he had any idea who we were or anything like that.
No, not at all.
It wasn't like he was being kind or polite to say, "Oh, that's who you are." Well, yeah, sure. I've read lots of Green Lantern.
It wasn't bad.
And certainly you get that at shows too. I was in India in January for a show, and the Indian people are absolutely lovely and kind and polite and excited to have you there. And you could tell who had read your stuff because they came up with battered copies, and who was just there because you were a foreign creator and they wanted to have a piece of that. So you would get people that would, know your stuff like the back of their hand. And then you would also get people who would come up and say, "I loved your work on Green Lantern and Silver Surfer." Which is actually really cool that someone...
It's better than Green Arrow.
Then, well, of course. Then it's really cool when someone cares enough to tell you a little white lie that they like your stuff.
That's true. That's a good way of looking at it. That's very good. Yeah. Huh. I once had a reaction like that when I was driving down I live in Connecticut, so I was driving down from here to Baltimore for the convention. This is about, 6 years ago. I think it was right before COVID. And, or after, I don't know.
It was longer.
And yeah, I think so. I get stopped just at the north end of the Baltimore border where traffic is always stupid. And the cop comes out and, says, does the normal stuff, the let's make a deal part of how fast you were driving, okay. I was only driving about 5 miles over the speed limit. So, he wasn't angry. But he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Baltimore." He says, "What for?" And I said, "Well, there's a comic book convention." He says, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And I tell him what the show is like. And I said, "You should drop by. It's over the weekend. If you got some time off, come on in. Wear your uniform. They'll think it's cosplay." And he laughed his ass off and gave me a pass. Waved me on, thanked me. We had a nice chat. And when he showed up at the show, I think he came in on Sunday. He had a book of mine for me to sign. Whoa!
He's thinking, "Man, I'm glad I didn't pistol whip that guy just on principle."
That's right.
I wouldn't have gotten the signature.
I'm glad too, because that's kind of happened to me once already.
I have some things to talk about with your career and the way you've done things. As you look back on that video introducing some of the things you worked on, you have a lot of experience crossing two properties and or genres and or things together. You've done it well for a long time. All the way back to Amalgam and DC versus Marvel and Batman and Alien, tons of different things. How do you approach something like that, where you're taking two properties and mashing them up against another existing property
with great excitement, because those are the cool jobs. Really, it's just a matter of it's storytelling like anything else, right? But to me, the key to that stuff is that you're getting to tell a story that's never been told before. Fantastic Four has fought Doctor Doom 100 times in the past, and they'll fight him 100 times in the future. And there's a cyclical nature to that sort of stuff. But when you get to work on something like Batman Aliens or Green Lantern Surfer, Green Lantern Aliens, whatever it is, where you're able to tell a story that no one's ever told before, that's kind of cool. That's a gift, for one. And it allows you to, I think, figure out what the distillation of those characters is, at least for you, because you're getting to the core of those characters. What makes these characters work? What makes them tick? And you try to portray that in those stories, because they can't, or at least shouldn't be, so continuity laden that you're only appealing to the hardcore fans. To me, the allure to a lot of those stories is that you want to be able to hand that to anybody, and have them go, "Oh, this is cool. I haven't read comics in 20 years, but I can read this one because everything I need to know is right here." I'm not a fan of the sort of continuity navel gazing that sometimes slips into these crossover books, because we're worrying too much about appealing to the hardcore audience. The hardcore audience is going to be there anyway. So to me, the job is to make it as accessible and as inviting to everybody. And maybe that's why I got so many offers to do them. And there's also a factor of, don't be an asshole. Don't be a problem to work with, because you're working with, like Batman Aliens, you're working with DC, you're working with Dark Horse, and you're working with 20th Century Fox at the time, although now you're working with Disney. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody has to trust you to do the job. So you need to be the guy that's not going to step on toes or be a problem child, which is frankly not that hard. But you just have to understand that your job is to make sure that everybody is pulling in the same direction on the oars. And all of these crossovers seem to go fairly well. And certainly to great extent, because I was working with great artists on all of them. There's not a stinker in the bunch.
I mean,
that Bernie Wrightson guy, he went on to some good stuff.
Yeah, he was all right, if you like that kind of thing.
Listen, who asked who asked who for this one?
For Batman Aliens? Bernie and I came up with the idea driving back from, I think, a convention in Manhattan. I think one of the earliest shows at one of those, maybe the last Fred Greenberger show at the Javits Center. We had ridden down together because we lived literally a mile and a half from each other, and we were kicking around ideas of what we could work on together. And Bernie said, "Well, how about Batman Aliens?" Because Dark Horse was doing the Aliens books. And I said, "Man, that'd be cool, but they'll never let us do it. That's never been done before. So why, getting all of those brands aligned would be more trouble than it's worth." And he said, "Yeah, probably, but let me call Dark Horse on Monday and see." So we called Dark Horse on Monday, and they went, "Huh, that's interesting. Let's ask around." And like a week later, we got a call that said, "Okay, we're going to do that. What's the story?" And we both
looked, very satisfying feeling.
We both looked at each other and went, "Oh shit, we don't have a story." We said, "You know what? We'll get that written up and we'll get back to you." So the next week or so was us kicking around ideas and me principally saying to Bernie, what do you want to draw and what do you not want to draw? And of course, he said, I don't want to draw buildings and I don't want to draw cars. So that's why it's
xenomorphs are fine.
But that's organic, man. He doesn't have to have a straight edge for that stuff. So that's how it ended up set in the Yucatan jungle, because it's all jungle and swamps and all that stuff that Bernie was so masterful at. So a lot of the story was just built around both stuff that he wanted to draw and stuff that I had experienced on a couple of different trips to the Yucatan with Jim Starlin, frankly, exploring Mayan ruins and the jungles and all that stuff down there. So it was drawn very much from experience, including, Batman ends up in a cave system down there, and I went into a cave system with Starlin and Jim Sherman, and did stupid shit that we shouldn't have done. And we were a couple miles in and a couple miles down, and I found out later that it was the rainy season. So if it had rained, we probably would have drowned down there. But which a hell of a way to go. But it was all of that stuff that I had experienced, and it comes out in the story, not in a one-to-one sort of way, but in a way that I know what it feels like to be in a cave in the Yucatan. I know what the jungle growth feels like down there, and you pull that stuff out of yourself, and it gets into the script.
The first thing you learn or you're taught in a creative writing class is to write about your own experiences. And a lot of young writers try that, and they realize, yes, this is boring. I'm a young writer. I haven't had real life experiences. But you did all this cave stuff on the peninsula when you had no idea that it was going to wind up a Batman alien story. You're just reaching into your brain quiver.
You take it in, and what I constantly tell prospective writers, or just writers, I tell people not to call themselves prospective writers or wannabe writers or writers in training. You're just a writer. If you write, you're a writer. And the thing that I tell them is that you have to go live a life. You have to have experiences, go places, do things, meet people, experience joy, experience heartbreak, experience the whole range of what's out there. And not that you're going to go, I'm going to go have a joyful experience, and then I'm going to write that joyful experience into a story. But you take all of that in, it's all grist for the mill, and then it comes out sometimes 20 years later when that machine that's working up here somehow needs that, it pulls it out of the memory bank and shows it to you, and you go, oh, I can put that in here. I can put the feeling of that in here, in a totally different context. To my knowledge, I met neither aliens nor Batman in the caverns in San Cristobal, Mexico.
Bats?
There weren't bats that at least that we saw, but it was pretty dark in there. So it was not like going to Carlsbad Caverns and get walkways and lights and stuff. You got in about 30 feet and it was pitch black, and then you were on your own.
Yeah. I've spent very little time cave dwelling, but it ain't like it is in the movies.
It's considerably less lit.
Yes.
And by the time we got done with it, at the end of the day, we were down there for about 8 hours, I guess, maybe more. Most of our flashlights had failed, and just from the dampness down there, and it in retrospect, it was a little hairy, and we were really kind of putting ourselves at risk. But when you're once you get a couple miles down, there's really nothing else to do but turn around and come back when it's time. There's no there's no get me out of here.
There's no gift shop.
Not that I saw. There was a gift shop. The lights were off.
I mentioned earlier mashing things up, and I regret that term because you don't do that. There are plenty of people who say, this is mashing with that, or one of the things about your writing is that there seems to be an authentic connection between when you were talking about doing a crossover, right, where you're bringing different characters or different experiences together. There is a way that it seems authentic, and it seems like it makes sense, not just I turned the corner and Batman's there, right? Is that how important is that to you?
I don't think about it a whole lot. I mean, I try to tell a story that I want to read. That's ultimately what my job is. Even if it's not really my job. My job is to work within the parameters that the publisher gives you, blah, blah, blah. But more than anything, it's just a sense of, I want to tell a cool story that I want to read and that hopefully is fun for the artist to draw. Because if the artist isn't having any fun, the audience isn't going to have any fun. That's really a big part of it. So, part of it is just what's going to be cool to look at. What's a cool thing that we can get into this book that makes sense and is also visually exciting, because this is visual storytelling. And if you just got people sitting around on a couch, well, why are you bothering?
How long did it take for you to figure out that you need to get the artist engaged?
Day one, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
your mentor was an artist as well, so there's that.
I got taught to write comics by Jim Starlin, so it's not an accident that my scripts tend to be visual and hopefully fun to draw, because I learned it from a guy who he draws pretty good. That guy. And the comics in general were, for me as a kid, even the comic had to look good. I was drawn to the best looking books that you could get your hands on, and the ones that weren't drawn very well, even if the story was terrific, it was not my cup of tea. So I always approached it as visual storytelling, rather than I have a story to tell and it happens that somebody's going to draw it. Like, my job is to figure out the most visual way to tell that story. Even though I can't draw myself, I can see the pages in my head. I can see them in my head, and I can describe them. And I always could. I could just do that from day one. It didn't occur to me until a long time into doing this that not everybody could do that. Not everybody has the visual camera in their brain to take the mental pictures and then describe them in a script. Because I could do it, I just figured everybody else could do it. And then then you find out, oh wait, you can't do that, or at least it's not natural for you to do that. There's always
a lot of really good writers in other media can't. They just don't think visually. I started bringing in playwrights, John Ostrander, Del Close, folks like that, to write comics, because they understood blocking, stage blocking. And they were trained to think visually that way, not only as writers for the stage, but also as performers, as actors. So the ability to think visually, a lot of people learn it. A lot of people can't get it. And those that do it and have it down are masters of the medium. They are the writers that you want. And they are the writers that artists who don't write want to work with.
That's been my experience. That some people have it, some people can learn it, some people ain't got it, never going to have it.
And some very good writers fall into that last category. It's sad.
Yeah. I have read scripts from writers, mostly because an artist was bitching about it, and I'd be like, just send it to me. Let me take a look at it. Who obviously they had a story to tell, but nary a clue as to how to tell it visually. I've rewritten scripts from writers so that they were more visually sound and better to be absorbed by an artist. Some of the writers don't know that I did it because it was handed to me and said, "Here, could you take care of this for me?" But that's part of the process, and if you can do it, I think this is the best way to tell a story. That's why I'm still doing it. It's more to me it's more satisfying to tell a story in this way when you're working with the right artist and the right rest of the team as well. Everything just comes out beautifully, more so than, to me, any other medium. But when one of the links in that chain is not working right, there's no fixing it. Short of replacing the link in the chain, or short of replacing whatever person is not even holding up there in the bargain, but just not gelling with everybody else. Again, everybody's got to pull on the oars in the same direction.
That's right. And some teams don't work. Two people get together, writer artist, and they're doing great work, and then they finish the project, they work with other people, and it doesn't work. It falls flat on its face. That dynamic changes with every project and with every co-conspirator, which I think is part of the fun of comics. But then as an editor, I had my fingers in over a dozen projects at any one time anyway. So, it's an editor's a great job if you have a short attention span.
Yeah, it's creative casting is paramount to me still. And I think the assembly line necessity of monthly comics works against that. Sometimes it's just who's walking through the hall to pick up the last 8 pages of this issue, and they might be completely at odds with the other penciler on the book, and they might be completely at odds with your sense of storytelling, but the book's got to go out on time. So I think I tend to dig my heels in and not really want to write something until I know who's drawing it, which is not a terribly popular thing to do editorially, because you have to keep that train moving, and sometimes the artist is an unknown, and I've done it a few times where you're sort of writing blindly to artist X, and to me that's just not an enjoyable experience, and you're not getting the best end product, because I'm not writing to that artist, I'm just writing to an artist, which tends to kind of come off like a Xerox of a Xerox sometimes.
One of the scariest moments that I have encountered as an editor is working on a script that is on time or late that we need right now. We don't have the artist, whatever reason the artist dropped out or whatever. So in the script, since you don't want to have to go back to it, you're writing in the credit box, and the credit box says, "Artist, your name here." And that's when you know you're in deep trouble.
Not a good scenario.
Not a good scenario, and it does happen from time to time.
I mean, I have certainly I've written scripts, and then the artist changed, and so I would, presuming there's time, I've said, give me the script back for a day or 2 days at most, and I'm going to tweak it for the person that's drawing it rather than the person I thought was going to be drawing it. And it's probably the audience sees no qualitative difference in it, but I do. And if I can make the thing just a little bit better by putting a little bit of extra effort into it, that's part of the job.
You have at least several thousand readers and hopefully a hell of a lot more. Don't count on all of them not knowing anything. One of them is going to know whatever it is that you don't know. So find out.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm one of those readers, and I know, so that there's at least one guy that's happier. And again, I cherish every one of those readers. I appreciate it, and they've given me a very tidy life to live, just making up stuff. So I'm forever grateful. But also, I'm not thinking about any of them when I sit down to do a script. I'm thinking about me, which is the height of selfishness. But I'm the only audience whose tastes I'm absolutely sure of. So I'm going to write to me, and then hope that the thing that I come up with is going to bring everybody else along for the ride.
That's the problem with some of the folks who get their start in movies or television and then start doing comics, which is not uncommon. It used to be. Because film, be it television or movies or what have you, has a collaborative nature that is instantaneous. It starts out sequential, but it rapidly becomes instantaneous. In comics, our process is not all at once, everybody together. It's you do your work and it moves on to the next person, moves on to the next person. Doesn't mean that you can't collaborate, you can't talk about it and stuff. You do, and the better stories generally do show that. But you're writing to yourself whether you want to or not, because you're alone in that room.
Very much so. Again, I'm the only one whose tastes I'm sure of, so I just make sure that guy's happy. Within reason, because you do have parameters that you're supposed to work in. Particularly when you're playing with somebody else's toys. When you're playing with Marvel's toys or DC's toys or Lucasfilm's toys, they have every right to say, okay, this is what we would like. Or to give you some notes as you go along the way, because again, it's theirs, it's not yours. But I've been fortunate enough to enjoy a huge amount of freedom in my work for hire stuff as well, so that you get a little spoiled for that too.
How much direction were you given for Darth Maul?
Very, very little, honestly. I figured. We knew that we were going to show off that he had tattoos on his chest, and we were going to show him without a shirt. So I put that up front in the first issue because I figured that was pretty cool. The Darth Maul story itself was actually, I had a story outline page and a half that I had sent in to Dark Horse, and it got sent into Dark Horse and passed along to Lucasfilm, and it was going to be the companion piece. It was going to be sort of part one of a, not a two-part story, but a tandem story with Darth Maul prose novel. So when we had a meeting, and this was pre-Zoom days, so we couldn't see each other. We just could hear each other. So we got in a meeting with Dark Horse and Lucasfilm and the writer of the novel and me, a few other people, and they have the writer of the novel pitch his story for the novel. And it turns out his story for the novel was exactly the story that I had sent into Dark Horse.
Really?
He had gotten those notes and cribbed most of it for his story. And I don't think through maliciousness. I just think through sort of not understanding how the process worked, that this was not like the story that I had pitched was for me. It wasn't for the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But, thank God we weren't on Zoom, because I was pretty slack-jawed over what had just happened. so he gives his pitch, and it's essentially my story. And then they go, "Okay, Ron, what do you want to do?" And I'm like, well, I know what I want to do, but I apparently can't do it anymore. So between myself and Randy Stradley, who was the Star Wars editor, or what the main Star Wars editor at Dark Horse, we kind of just made up something on the spot, and which worked out fine, which turned out fine, and I had a really good time doing it. But it was we were bailing water all of a sudden because the ship was taking on water. And again, sometimes that happens. That's not completely unusual for bits of your story to end up somewhere else, and you have to wing it all of a sudden, because to a certain extent it's all community property when you're playing with somebody else's toys.
Right. You handle your own stuff, a creator-owned project. Well, I shouldn't say you, because I don't know how you handle it. But most folks that I've worked with will take a creator-owned project that they co-own and treat it very differently than they treat the corporate-owned properties that they do. When I was at DC or any of the other publishers, if it was a corporate-owned property, then I had to protect their asset, as well as the integrity and the artistic reasons why we chose that talent to begin with. That's often hard to do. If they created it, they know what they're doing. It's their character. You can ask them why, and you probably should from time to time, but the leeway is different because you're not protecting their character. You're helping them protect their character. Big difference.
Yeah, I in terms of the storytelling, I don't approach either of those any differently. Other than that if it's a creator-owned book, you can do whatever you want. It's yours. You want to kill you want to kill everybody on page 2. Your book, do what you want. And obviously you don't get that much rope on a work for hire job. But you understand that going in. You know that you are playing with somebody else's toys, and you have to put the toys back on the shelf when you're done with it, unless, like the case of Emerald Twilight, where you are asked to break the toys. So you just be a professional in either event. You're a professional, but you know that if you own it, there's no one to tell you no, which is in a lot of ways a two-edged sword. There's no one to.
Oh no,
he's frozen.
I think Ron is frozen.
Somebody.
Am I back?
You're back.
Am I back?
You're back. I think somebody took a sword to your cable.
We're half in a storm right now. Just
okay.
Thunder and a little lightning out there, some rain. It's apparently spring is here for real now. Probably have it for about 3 days.
85 here today, so
it was warm here too. But I'll take it. After that long, hard, ugly winter, I will take it.
Having grown up in Chicago, I have learned from a very early age. May 22nd, it could snow.
We got a couple inches. Didn't stick around except for 5-6 hours. I think early April, whatever second weekend of April, whatever Record Store Day was, because I got up in the morning and went, oh, I'm supposed to go to the record store today, and there's an inch of fresh snow out there.
I've told this story recently. When I grew up in Jersey, and at one point I moved to the Poconos, and when the first year I moved to the Poconos, it snowed in April, and I was reminded of the Prince song, "Sometimes It Snows in April." I thought, oh wow, look, it's like a song. And then it snows every April in the Poconos. It's not sometimes. And then I realized that he's from Minneapolis, and I'm pretty sure it snows there every April there. It's not sometimes. He was making it up.
Oh yeah, you're not out of winter, particularly in Minnesota, until probably May at best.
I love Minneapolis, St. Paul. I love the region, but that wind can kill you. It just rip you.
I want to, as I do this often with our guests, sometimes I notice themes and things. You write a lot about samurais. I don't know if you noticed that.
That has occurred to me.
Why is that?
Mostly because I keep finding artists dumb enough to draw them. Just hey, look, a guy with a sword is cool.
Sure, I'm not arguing that.
And the sense of honor that goes with it, and the sense of doing the right thing, whatever the consequences, appeals to me. I guess as a storyteller as well as a human. So I am drawn to that genre over and over. And obviously we're doing more Shinku, so
yeah.
So there's that sensibility to it. Plus, it's so visually interesting to me. It's so visually enticing to me that that I'll go back to it as often as I can, because again, this is visual storytelling. And if you can, if your main character's walking around in a suit of samurai armor, he looks cool no matter what.
Unless you're going through airport security.
Better than a guy in a trench coat. We got too many guys in trench coats.
It's all the same trench coat. You're right. Yeah.
Well, sometimes they're blue and sometimes they're tan.
Yeah, mostly tan, I guess.
That's true with Superman's hair color.
I'm in terms of when I came of age creatively and as a professional. It was the 90s, so I've had my fill of guys in trench coats. As far as I'm concerned, John Constantine should be grandfathered in, and everybody else go find something else to wear.
I agree with you. John Constantine is my favorite supporting character, along with Doctor Strange. It's like if you do a whole book, a whole ongoing series about a character who's magic, then you can do anything, and that undermines the suspense. But if you use them in a supporting role, you can almost do anything you want with those characters. You can really have fun because you're not dumping on the franchise or the concept. You can get into the character.
Yeah, I worked Doctor Strange into damn near every Marvel story that I could. When we went back and did Silver Surfer Rebirth, Doctor Strange showed up in there, and we did some weird Ditko visuals and stuff. Just because, again, I think that stuff looks cool, and I wanted to see Ron Lim draw it, so that's how it wound up in the book. When we did the All Access crossover, Marvel and DC sequels to Marvel versus DC. There's an entire issue that's built around Batman jumping through Doctor Strange's skylight, just because I wanted to see that happen.
Sure.
So
you wanted to see that happen.
So everything else was, architecture to have that moment in that story. And it turned out as cool as I thought it would.
Yeah, it's interesting. The use of magical characters is great. Like, Tom Zoller uses his Doctor Strange amalgam or anagram for that same thing. You see him occasionally, but only because you need to use a magical user to make sense of what needs to happen, right? It's an interesting concept of having tools in your writer's box to do that. Another question I have for you is how, for people who don't know, you are one of the writers of the video game Diablo 4. How is the experience for you? We talked about this last time you were on the show, but how is the experience of writing video games different from comics? I know writing is writing, but How is it different?
Yeah, ultimately, writing is writing, and the job is the same. It's telling stories that engage the audience emotionally and evoke a reaction. The biggest difference, I think, is that when I write a comic, I am the god of that universe. Whatever I say happens. How does Superman beat the Hulk? Well, I said he did.
Right.
And now just draw it. On a video game, there is a through line. There's at least for Diablo, which is the franchise that I work on. There is a through line. There's a story that you're telling. There are characters that you're dealing with. But the player is intimately involved in that experience, and the player can, to some extent, dictate how that story evolves because they make decisions that impact what order the story is told in, and how they engage with it, and what parts of it they engage with. So you want to try to make sure that the story is satisfying in whatever bits and pieces you have, even if the player is not going to engage with all of them. You want the spine of your story has to make sense by itself, and then all of the side tracks for your story have to play into that, but also have to stand on their own. It's certainly a learned skill, and you have to be okay with the audience maybe not engaging with some of what you've done because they're concerned with other parts of the game, other parts of the campaign. So you do the fullest extent of it. You do the fullest extent of the job, and hopefully the audience engages with it as fully as possible. But some of them will, some of them won't. I worked on the season 8 content for Diablo that released today, so it's.
I got an email about that.
It's a big chunk of content that's out there, and some people are going to play every bit of it. Some people are going to play some of it, and some people are going to ignore the story completely because they want to run around and kill monsters. And all of those are valid ways to engage with it.
As long as we're keeping the monster killers off the streets and in front of the game.
We've certainly come up with some stuff to keep people in their chairs, I guess.
I mean, I was just looking back in our text chain, and there was a text that I sent you. I said, I especially enjoy the scene with Variana ripping the entrails out of the corpses and eating them. Ha, ha, ha. And you said, well, that was all me. So I did, so
it very well. And that's really the other, I probably should have mentioned that. That's really the other part of the game is that there are multiple people working on the game. Like for season 8, I was the narrative guy working with some quest designers. And so what you experience is us, but on something that's larger, like the expansion, there are multiple people working on multiple sections of it. And you're all trying to pull together to make this thing make sense. So that bit in particular was all the mercenaries were mostly me, and as part of 2 of the mercenaries were done by another writer that left the project, and I sort of inherited them. So you do have bits and pieces that are yours, but I guess in a lot of ways a comic is yours, a video game is ours, because you work with so many other people that have a stake in the whole thing. Everybody that takes part in it contributes an integral part of it to make the whole thing to come together. I'm frankly still not sure how the whole thing comes together. There's a bit of magic involved to it because everybody's doing their thing, and then you wind up with this massive AAA game that literally millions of people are engaged with.
You like for that particular scene, like you came up with like this is what she's gonna say, and then she's gonna sit there and she's gonna like like in the scene is that an effigy gets enlarged into a full-size body, and then this mercenary goes and starts ripping the guts out of it and eating it. Like when you saw that transformed from what you had written into what came there, what was that experience like for you?
Oh, that's the coolest thing ever. I mean,
Right.
when you see the thing that you wrote, especially for a cut scene where you're dealing with more fully animated stuff rather than gameplay, that's just the coolest. You're writing a movie at that point. And the animators that we have at Blizzard are just amazing. They do superior work. So it's very cool to see the thing. The coolest part of a comic is to see the thing that was in your head made real on the page. The artist envisions that, draws it on the page, and suddenly it's concrete and it's real. Same thing is true of video games, where the thing that was in your head, the series of events, the actions that were in your head are suddenly there are characters moving around and doing those things. They're both a little godlike in terms of how you get them out there, but there are a lot of other gods in video games and not quite so many in comics.
I like
that. Is there something you haven't done yet?
That you want to do?
Well, that was implied.
There's always stuff. I mean, there's always stuff. But I've been very fortunate to have played with most of the toys at Marvel and DC and Star Wars and Conan, and having done that stuff is great. Doing that stuff again is great. There are always, I would love to write a Star Trek story at some point just to scratch that itch, because of growing up in New York and having Channel 11 show you a Star Trek episode every night at 6:00. That was a ritual for me for a number of years and had a huge effect on what I wanted to do and how I do it. It was the thing that spoke to me over and over again. But I would love to do Star Trek. I'd love to do some more Tarzan. Right now, I've got a half dozen creator-owned things that are in various stages of development or production, just because I've got some time and I've got people that want to work with me or that I want to work with who are also making time in their schedules. And you want to get those things out of your head and onto the page. Because if you don't, eventually it's 20 years later and you missed your chance. So it's an opportunity to bring more things into the world, to create some things, as well as play with other people's toys. I just like doing the job, and I like working with artists. I like having artists to collaborate with and to make my stories better, because ultimately the artist that you are working with, that's who dictates how good your story is.
Right. Every person in the process contributes, but the artist can kill you or make your stuff amazingly beautiful.
Yeah, I've certainly written.
If you got a lousy letterer, you can get around that. I mean, it's not what I would prefer, but you can get around that.
Yeah, you're wholly dependent on it. And yeah. I tell people that all the time too when I do workshops or something like that. It's, look, if the artist has the artist essentially dictates how good your story is, because that's the prism that the story is told through. And if you're not cool with that, if you're a writer who's like, well, I don't like that, I want to be in charge and I want the artist to do what I say and exactly the way I envision it in my head, well, that's not how this works, man. That's if you're not okay with the artist being, one, your co-author, and two, kind of being largely involved in how successful the story is. If you're not okay with that, this is probably not the medium for you. You could go tell a story in prose, then you're 100% in charge. Or go write a screenplay, and then you're giving up all control to the director and the actors and the costume department and the special effects department, and the myriad of people that work on a film.
It's a totally different animal. Yeah.
So to me, the comics are that happy medium of the complete control that you get from prose, but it's not a visual medium, so I'm less enthused about that. But it's much more personal, and you have much more control than writing a screenplay and having somebody else come in and turn that into a movie.
One of the nice aspects of our medium becoming legitimate or legitimatized over the last couple of decades, it's not just for morons anymore, is the fact that people who work in the medium now have a greater understanding that it is a unique communications form. There is nothing quite like comics. You can argue that TV is shorter movies. You're wrong, but you can make that argument. It doesn't matter. Comics is unique unto itself. And there's not one way to do comics. There's not 100 ways to do comics. There's as many different ways as there are people in the business. But it is unique unto itself.
Yeah, it's a unicorn to me. It's a unicorn, but it's a unicorn that we as a species have been telling stories visually since we were painting on cave walls. So
right.
It's a very specific skill, but I think it's a skill that mankind responds to. Sometimes you have to teach somebody how to read a comic, but once they understand, all right, this, you go there and you go there and you go there. I think it's pretty universal. Certainly it's very universal in terms of you strip all those word balloons out and you can have an understanding of that story wherever you are.
That's right.
Here, France, China, South America, like everybody can understand a story told in pictures, regardless of language.
Learning under guys like Joe Orlando and Dick Giordano, which was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I was taught not only how a page should work without the lettering, without the balloons, but how to see that upside down. Turn the page around, and there are storytelling aspects there that you have missed otherwise. It's a fascinating phenomenon. It was Joe Orlando who showed me that and took all these different pages out. And it was brilliant. It was wonderful. And I'd seen things that I'd been looking at all my life and yet had never seen before. And then, of course, one of Joe's favorite artists was Alex Toth, and you can't do that with Alex. So
there's a lot of things you couldn't do with Alex.
No, that's true. I had worked with him. And I was chided by Carmine Infantino in public at a convention for having worked with Toth.
Wow. I'm very glad that I was taught to do this and was embraced by artists. Starlin Wrightson, Terry Austin, Fred Hembeck, Joe Staten. These are the guys that were around me as a kid, as a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. And I think I did my first script when I was 22. absorbed all of that stuff from those guys. So I very much came to it with a writer's brain that was focused on art rather than a writer's brain that was simply focused on my deathless pearls of wisdom that were going to go on the page.
Right.
It's to me, it's which is the age old, which is more important, the writer or the artist? And the answer is, oh, well, you have to have both, which is true, but really the answer is the artist.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a writer that does not mind saying that out loud.
I can think of a lot of artists who learned how to write and became good writers. The other direction, not so many. Not a lot of writers evolved into good artists. I guess it's happened, but
it's fairly obvious whether you can do the art side of the job or not.
Right.
Right. There's a fairly high bar of entry, and if you don't meet it, you're not entering. And to write, and I don't just mean for, artists that are learning to write. I just mean for anybody. Well, a lot of people confuse typing with writing. They're not the same skill, but that's part of it. And that's why so many more people want to write, and also because drawing comics is, I think, the hardest kind of art job you can do in the world, and you have to love it. There's a lot of other ways to make a living as an artist that don't involve the kind of hours and skills that you need to be a comic book artist.
Being a comics artist is a great job if you happen to be a vampire, because you never leave the house, you never leave the studio, you're just drawing. I see Dina's with us. I didn't get a chance to read it because I was babbling.
He's laughing at your artists and writers switching sides and stuff. So.
I prefer.
There would be a lot more artists who can write than writers who can draw.
I think, speaking on behalf of America, I agree with you, Dean.
I absolutely love Dean's writing, and I think he gets better at it all the time, and just incredible. But
Dean's
not try and find non-artists who can draw like he can. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm reminded
those guys who are dual threats who can do both with aplomb. I really hate them all.
I'm sure.
Well, you mentioned Joe Staten, a good friend of mine and collaborator for half a century. He and Hillary are the two most wonderful humans on this or probably any other planet. And I just wanted to point out that if you're going to any convention in the next year, you're probably going to see Joe and Hillary there, because they've been doing the convention circuit really hard. So ask them about Ron. Go up and ask them about Ron.
I will see them in June. They'll be at Heroes. I'll see them there. So
I'm not sure if Joe's coming up. Our local Albany Con is June as well. So Joe is usually there, but sometimes he's got to come.
I think they're doing Heroes and then the Garden State one back to back weekends.
Ooh, that would kill me.
Back to back separates the adults in the room from the children. I do not do back to back if I can possibly help it, because it's a lot. I love traveling. I love going places and seeing things I haven't seen before. But back to back weekends for a show is a little rough.
It is.
20 years ago, I went from the Chicago Comic-Con, back when it was a big, huge show, the following week to San Diego. And I still haven't recovered. I'm still tired from.
Well, this year is gonna be that for me, because there's New York Comic-Con right into Baltimore Comic-Con the following week.
Is that true?
Yes.
Wow, that sucks.
Yes, it does.
I'm sorry to hear
Those
that.
are two of the most active things that I do, like at shows. I'm most active at probably those two shows. So one for one reason and one for another, you know.
My problem, other than the fact that it's a read show and all read shows suck, is that New York is at a disadvantage. It has the Javits Center, and that's it in Manhattan, which is where people want to be if they're from out of town. And it outgrew that building before the building was built. Same thing is true in San Diego. The San Diego Convention Center was built, I think, in the 15th century, somewhere mid 15th century. And it holds a couple hundred people just fine. And that's it.
All right. We are running out of time, and there's like still more questions I have, but I want to give you some time back. Shinku, let's end on this. So Shinku Complete, ends in 9 days. 9 days. There's tons of different things you can get on this Kickstarter, and crowdfunding campaign from Zoop.gg. And the link is in the comments. So go back into the comments and you'll see where you can get to it, and it'll take you there. For anybody who joined late or tuning in now, what do you want to say about Shinku as a kind of a last word there? Right?
This is mostly about putting Lee Motor's last pages, or at least among his last pages, out into the world, so that everybody that appreciated his work, or maybe is just discovering his work, can get their hands on it. And for me, it's a way to honor my friend and to honor his art and his legacy, and remind people that he was in many ways one of a kind. There's nobody that really draws like Lee. There's nobody that tells a story like him, has the life in his pages and in his line that he has. So anytime I did a project, if Lee was available, he was the first guy I called. One of the beauties of working in this business is you can work with your friends, and many of your friends are incredible craftsmen, incredible artists, that bring your work to life, that bring to life the shadows that are in your head. And Lee was absolutely at the top of that list. And I miss him every day. It still hasn't quite sunk in that I'm not going to see him again. So I guess this Zoop campaign and getting those pages out into the world is my way of seeing him again.
Let me ask you a question here about that. How many pages in the book are pages that were unpublished previously?
There's probably 35 or 40. I don't think we've counted all of them. There are some alternate pages as well. So we're going to get all of that stuff in there.
That is a wonderful tribute to your friend and your collaborator. And I admire you for going through all this. That's really very respectful. Good for you.
It's the right thing to do. So I had to do it. And I appreciate you saying that, Mike, very much.
It's also some pretty cool comics. Let's
oh yeah, the comics are good too.
You're getting some,
hopefully get a pretty good comic out of it too. But if nothing else, get a big fat oversized hardcover.
Yeah, that's
looking
awesome.
forward to it.
All right, Ron, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for getting in after. Did you have a game tonight? Did you have a softball game that you came from?
There was no. This Tuesday night is an off night. Usually I play
excellent.
on Mondays.
I will write a note on that. So Ron is available on Tuesdays.
I am available on Tuesdays generally. In curling season, I go
curling season right
on Tuesdays, but softball's Monday, Wednesday.
Excellent.
Because
Good.
God knows I don't have enough to do.
Of course, none of us do.
Out of the house doing stuff, running around with guys half my age. So
it's good to get some exercise.
Exercise is good. I don't feel right if I don't get some, but it seems like they keep moving first base farther and farther back every year.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I got some exercise back in the 80s. I wasn't crazy about it.
It seems to take a little bit longer to get to the base every year. So I got to find out who's moving that base back.
Good for you, Ron. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. I truly appreciate it. I wouldn't speak for Bob, but I'll bet you he appreciates it too.
I do.
Well,
Thanks so much for being here.
First old fashions on Bob in Baltimore,
That's
if
fine.
not before.
Well, that'll have to be after the Guinness.
Oh yeah, there's that place too.
Yeah, there's that place.
Fair
All right.
enough. It's my pleasure, guys. This is always fun.
Well,
All right.
We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, and
Thanks, Ron. Thank you
good luck
very
on the
much.
campaign.
Looking forward to that.
We have made it through another episode of the Pop Culture Squadcast Live. Our guests continue to build up. We will be here next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we will have Tiffany Babb, comic journalist and founder of the Comics Courier, which is a new publication that is kickstarted on a twice a year basis. She's going to be on, or they're going to be on, and we're going to talk to them about all of the things that are cool about comics journalism and comics in general. So that's next week. We have Rob Venditti the week after that, and we have Dave Chisholm the week after that. And there is hopefully going to be a big announcement for one of our guests in June that is one of the most high profile guests we've ever had. So that should be fun.
Oh my.
Yep.
Most high profile guests.
One of.
Okay.
I mean,
I was going to say, because I don't think Don Trump is doing comics, but hopefully soon.
listen, it's the end of the show. Did you see this thing, this Doge badge that the idiot was holding up?
No.
He posted a picture saying like he's got a fake badge that says Dogeinator or something like that. Doge Father. That's what it says. It looks like a badge, a cop badge. But here's the thing. Hang on. It's got a badge number, and the badge number is 69420 because he's a child.
Okay, what is 69420? My brain is
69420.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Yes, I got it. Geez. I did. I can now see the hyphen. Yeah. Oh my. Well, that's typical. Let's elect an 8-year-old with a bad attitude. Yep. Great.
All right.
Now,
well,
thanks, folks.
We are gonna be here. Come in next week, and for the lovely adventures of what does Diamond's bankruptcy look like today, and some great comic book discussions with Tiffany Babb, because we're really excited for that. Thank you for being here, Mike. You have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
You too, Bob. All right, take it easy, folks. Thanks for coming.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?